You have exams coming up soon, and for a subject like English A, you're probably either stuck or unsure on how to actually prepare for it. What I'm going to give to you is a guide on how you can not just prepare for CSEC English A, but pass it in 6 months. All right. Now, ideally, this guide is for persons who may not have been paying that much attention in English class. All right. Now, at the end, I will give you a better idea of how to utilize this information. But for now, let's go through this and see how you can get to a point where you're comfortably passing CSEC English A. So this is what we want to focus on in this video. All right, we're going to look at the general aims of the exam. I realize a lot of students don't know what the exam is about, and maybe that's true for all your exams. So double check in the syllabi for the different exams that you're sitting. But for English A, I can definitely let you know what that's about, how to study for English A. All right, if you've seen me before on Instagram or even here on YouTube, maybe you've kind of figured out what I'm going to tell you for that part and what you're going to do from months 1 to 6. All right. And then we're just going to say tata at the end. Yeah. So English is about you being able to comprehend and you being able to express yourself. And you're probably going like, yo, but comprehension, we don't even have comprehension in like paper 2. They took it out. We don't need to comprehend anything. Not entirely true. Not entirely true. So comprehension is not just getting a reading passage or an article and answering the questions. Comprehension also has to do with reading the instructions, understanding the instructions, understanding the type of writing you're supposed to be doing. All right. So when you look at questions like summary, that does require you to have some sort of understanding. All right. And that's where those 5 marks for the 5 main points come in. Those are fully under the comprehension profile. By the way, these are the actual profiles for English A. It's not comprehension. I put comprehension here because I want you to understand what they mean, but the actual profiles, I believe, are understanding and expression. And what is expression? Expression is your ability to take whatever stimuli you've been given, in other words, the instructions, and then be able to express yourself in writing, okay, in the various styles that are required. Now, when they say various styles, if you're not familiar with paper 2, you've got the summary, which is the informational style. You've got the short story question, which is a narrative slash descriptive style. It's got a lot more figurative language elements in it that you're required to use, to get more marks. Yeah. And argumentative is definitely a bit more informational, right? You're not going to make up stuff to win your argument, right? Maybe you can be persuasive, but even when you're persuasive, you do not make up facts. Yeah. You present facts in a way to persuade. All right. So that last question still requires some degree of information, and you've got to express depending on quite a few factors, right? But here is not to go down a breakdown into each of those questions, is to understand overall what you want to focus on, right? And that's expression. All right, so we've got understanding and expression. Oh, and I nearly forgot. Another part of expression is that second question in paper 2, which is actually not my favorite question in that entire paper. I dislike it greatly. You get potentially different formats. So understanding plays a really important role in that particular question, understanding slash comprehension as well as expression, because how are you going to express the situation if you have to write a notice versus a report versus a letter versus an email, and they're very context or situational specific? If you know that question, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't know that question, well, I would suggest you start to get familiar with it. If you can do that question really well, it's a very easy 30 marks. So I said I'll let you know how to study for English A. And really, when you understand that this exam is about your writing, right? Primarily, right? As well as the other skills such as having vocabulary, right? Having grammar skills, and, again, writing, what we need to do is actually practice. I know no one likes that suggestion. Yes, you actually have to practice. But I do recognize that English is probably not the only subject you're doing, right? For many of you who are looking at this, you've probably got 5 to 8, maybe even more subjects that you also have to manage. So, how can you kind of stay focused, all right, in a way that's quote unquote leisurely, right? But still ensure you cover stuff. All right. And moving forward, when I start to give you the process I use, you're looking at stuff that you want to just work on. All right. Don't try to understand everything. That's a perfectionist mentality. All right. Your aim is to pass, right? And you can pass with excellence, or how does CXC put in your mark schemes for anything superiority? You can pass with your superiority. All right. You can do that, but it does not require you to be perfect. So you want to be aware of the different areas in which you need to work on. All right. I'm just going to list general areas. Again, this is a general uh, suggestion. If you're doing work on your own, you can tweak it accordingly. All right. But this is a direction that I go for each single month. And it's a direction that my English A class would have started in July. And we're basically, at this point in time, nearly done. Now you're probably thinking, whoa, but it's November and exam is literally in 6 months. Can this work for me? Yes, because it can probably give you insight and or clarity on how you need to proceed. Now, if you think that you prefer to wait till a month before paper two to then begin preparing for paper two, then hey, not a problem. You can exit this video right now. I wouldn't recommend coming back to this video at that point in time. It will be quite stressful, but you can exit now. You can exit, and you can, do the last minute rush. But if you're still here, I'm going to give you some insight into how you can focus and what you should focus on to prepare. If it's an area that you think you're really good at, and I hope you're somebody who can assess themselves properly, then not a problem. You can probably skip through that section or skip through that topic. If it's an area that you don't think you're that good at, you really want to focus on it, right? Another thing is that you also want to ensure that stuff that you worked on in month one, month two, right? You try to keep that cycle. You still keep practicing them. So that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other thing that you need to do as well. But again, once you're doing anything, once you have an ambition, you really need self-discipline in order to achieve anything. And part of that is doing all the hard stuff. All right. So let me see how I can make this a lot easier for you so that when you're writing exams, you have a lot less stress to deal with. So this is how I like to start the first month. And it's grammar comprehension and notices, right? So we're tackling grammar, which is, guys, you need grammar for the exam. Please don't think you don't need grammar. All right. You still need to make sure your grammar is good, that you're writing great sentences, right? Now, here, what do you look out for maintaining good grammar? I think the top errors tend to be usage of tense, using the correct tense, like past tense, present tense, future. But past and present seems to give a lot of problems, especially when students are writing out their essays and trying to write them in the recommended time. So you really want to make sure that you're okay with your past tense and present tense. I actually gave my students really, really simple exercises. Yes, I gave them past tense and present tense. And it was, we did it. It was okay. Right. But if you think that's too baby, right? I still recommend doing it just to make sure that you're good. All right. You can go online, Google English past tense exercises and stuff like that. You also need to know that in English that we have regular and irregular verbs. So, English has a lot of inconsistent verbs. They don't play by the rules. So sometimes there are a lot of changes that you just have to memorize, which is why this is a very, very good practice. The second thing that I recommend is work on your comprehension skills, right? There are a variety of ways that you can do this. What I actually like to do with my students is work with articles or informational writing. All right. So in the workbook we have, I'll probably do a walkthrough of the workbook in another video. But in the workbook I created for them, we actually had 4 articles that I wrote. They said it was crazy hard. I didn't try to be crazy hard, but I really am trying to prepare them for an exam. But you can get any articles from online or from a newspaper once they're informational. I hope you know what informational is, and you should know what informational is. If you're not sure, please don't be afraid to comment down below, so at least I can create another video so you have a better understanding of what you should be looking at. But anyway, you're looking at articles primarily, and I gave them questions. I asked them what's the main idea, and that's something you really need to be able to do. When you read something, can you tell what this is about? Why you think the author wrote it? Right? That's a very simple thing that causes havoc. If you don't know what havoc is chaos, right? It confuses a lot of students. This is actually a skill that you need for summary writing. So what I was doing is actually preparing my students for writing summaries. All right, so we do our comprehension skills. We would answer questions, figure out the main idea, and of course, I need to train vocabulary because, guys, vocabulary is really important. All right. You guys are at an older level, and while unfortunately CXC does not provide a list of vocabulary, um, you must understand that your vocabulary shouldn't be at a primary school level. In fact, if you guys have uh, younger brothers, sisters, family members who are doing like SEA or any kind of, I don't know how the other Caribbean based primary exit exams are. But I know for SEA, some of the words they learn are pretty intense, right? If you're extra ambitious and you know you're going to be preparing for SATs or something like that, and know you're going to go into Cape and want to go to university, get an SAT list. Really, really fascinating words there, and that's going to help you. All right, and last but not least, we're going to look at notices, right? Do you know what notices are? It's one of the formats that you need for the second question in paper 2 is the question I dislike. I started with notices because I think notices are the easiest format to do. Unfortunately, I would say I'm not sure CXC likes to bring it as much. Still, you need to learn it, and you need to and learning these formats doesn't mean knowing that, oh, the heading goes here and the date goes here and the person who I'm writing to you to goes here and I need a subject and that has to be center line here. No, that's part of it, right? And that's a nice, easy 3 marks. Yes, all of that is worth 3 marks. What you really need to know is what goes into that type of information, right? So, like a notice does not have a lot of information, it's very specific information versus a report, which must be detailed, super, super detailed. Can't leave out anything, right? Can't leave out anything at all. Great. And that's what we want to do in the very first month in order to be prepared for exam. Didn't I say that I was setting everything up in month 1 for summaries? See, summary is here. Now, guys, don't be afraid of summaries. All right. I do think that the most challenging question in paper two is summary writing because students don't understand it or it's just taught a little horrifically, right? I think it's also taught kind of horrifically, right? The point of a summary is to take whatever you read and condense it. And in order to condense it, you must understand why the person is writing it, what's the main idea, and CXC is helping you out. They said, hey, pick the main ideas, right? But we're gonna do summary writing in this month. I actually ended this month with my class with summary writing. So what we did is we worked on emails first, all right, and then we did summary writing. If you notice, emails and formats would be two of the possible formats that can come for that second question in paper two. So it's a nice transition. It's a nice easy transition. It's almost the same question, all right. And if you're trying to speed up this process, you can do it back to back, right? Now, you're also seeing impressive nouns. I mentioned vocabulary before. I actually have a curated list of nouns that I gave my students. It's in their workbook. You can start compiling your own list or use the SAT list like I suggested. All right. Um, in order to have potential nouns to use. And it's really important, all right, because there are some words that will be great in an argumentative or persuasive essay, like saying the development of vaccines in the fight against COVID-19 was a crucial stage or a crucial occurrence in the battle against this deadly pandemic, right? So it's a little dramatic, but development, occurrence, those sound a lot more formal. Versus you're going to write a short story and you use that same, it could work. I'm not saying it could work, but because it's a short story and you can be way more creative, you know, if we're talking about, a reaction to the vaccine during the pandemic, maybe the sentence might be more. Mm, I'm trying to think of a good one, guys. I'm trying to think of a good one on the spot. Let me see. The the consistent ah the the continuous hammering. I'm using a intentional, using a figurative verb. The continuous hammering by the authorities of the need to go vaccinate was so frustrating to me because all I wanted to do was to stay at home and never leave it. All right. So I'm using a lot simpler words. Even if I use a quote unquote big word, because I use simpler words to just convey a scene because I want to build a picture. All right. So that's you've got to know as many nouns, as many verbs, as many adjectives as possible to know how to use it. And that's why practice is so important. All right. You won't know how you will use it until you begin practicing. So these are the ones that you should work with in month two. And of course, you've got to spend time on summary and making sure that your summaries are it. And don't forget, don't cross the word limit, all right? Don't cross the word limit. I know you're seeing debate and argumentative and thinking, listen, lady, isn't that the same thing? I agree, it's the same thing. But what you have to really focus on is getting used to having an opinion, right? And it's amazing how many students, how many of you guys, I'm sorry guys, I don't mean you guys personally, but I'm going based on some of the interactions that I have had. And there are a lot of students who will be like, oh, I like ice cream, but then can't say why they like ice cream. So knowing all the wonderful words in the world and knowing the format for this essay won't make sense if you cannot tell me why you like ice cream. Do you like ice cream because you prefer cold sweets? You prefer cold snacks because you live in a tropical climate? Do you prefer ice cream because it's sweet? right? And you really do like sweet, do you prefer ice cream because it comes in so many different flavors and you have all these options? Those are 3 points for an argumentative essay. So that's the point of debate practice. You want to pick a topic. It can be simple stuff. Some of the topics that we did were like free Spotify versus free YouTube, right? Or Netflix versus YouTube, or should Jurassic Park be real? Really simple stuff. And it's a great thing you can do with your friends. Just pick a topic. Just pick a topic and you will just talk about it. You want to figure out one, your opinion, and then you want to figure out, do I have points for my opinion to make sense to even me? And then that's what you want to do, right? And then the next step is to actually write essays, okay? And there's a very, very lovely format. I always say I love argumentative essays, not only because I like to argue and be right, right? I love these because the format for them is very, very logical, very, very reliable, okay? I can tell you what I should find in paragraph one, two, three, four, five. Yes, there should be 5 paragraphs, all right? And no, the downside or the disadvantage of that is that if somebody's marking a work and paragraph four does not have what paragraph four should have, it's problematic. All right, so again, you need to make sure you get a format and you need to practice. That's what you need to do. So we're back in month four, and I wouldn't say it's a breather month. But it's letters and reports. So if you've already done notices and emails, letters and reports are essentially the same question. It's essentially the same question, but you have to know the formatting. All right. So you're getting an opportunity to practice this, and I would suggest an opportunity to review summaries and argumentatives. Okay, because we haven't done summaries since month two, right? Since month two, that was 2 months ago. Do you even remember how to do it? I hope you do. I really hope you do. So you've gotta review these things here. All right, just to make sure that you're okay when you're moving ahead. And then you see impressive adjectives. Right? Yeah. So you want to make sure that you have a great list of adjectives. I think sometimes people think we only need adjectives for short stories. I mean, yeah, but when you're writing a short story, you also need figurative language, which can help paint a picture. And it does not mean that an informative piece does not need adjectives. What you may have is, just as we discussed before with the nouns, you may be using specific words. So you may say the fundamental evidence, fundamental songs, like what we call, like what we like to say, big words. It's a big word, right? So you may, the developmental procedure, right? The academic excellence, right? So those sound a lot better for something like a summary or the argumentative piece. It doesn't mean that you can't use them for uh, a short story, but they tend to just work better for academic writing. So you've still got to know all those nice little differences. Okay, so this is actually my favorite month. My bias is writing short stories. I write short stories, right? I never used to think I could write short stories until I started prepping short stories as samples for CSEC English A. And I was like, yo, but this is not so bad, right? I think I have 50 short stories that are written in a similar uh, kind of based on the format for CSEC. Good stories, huh? I try to write exciting stuff, right? I know people are like, oh God, that teacher write this, but God, it must be boring. But listen, someone just write some boring stuff. So y'all need to level up. And also some of you all write stuff that's a little too unrealistic. All right. So you need to be mindful of that. Okay. Even the best fantasy superhero action show is believable. right? Think about that. Just think about that. But anyway, this month we're doing short story practice. All right. So there's a format for writing short stories as well. There's a process. There's advice I give my students. So all of that is done in month five. Comprehension. You see comprehension again. In order to prep students for short story practice, I normally bring my own sample stories and we go through them so that they can dissect them and see that the plot order is there, that the character advice is there, that there's minimal dialogue. Because if you did not know, dialogue kills your word count, and dialogue must make sense, right? Because again, dialogue must make sense. Don't make it not make sense, guys. It's you only have a little bit of words to write a full story. All right, so that's what I normally do. And I also start off the month with a format review because, listen, haven't done notices since 4 months ago. Email was 3 months ago. Right, we got to remember these things, right? We did letters and reports last month. We just review the actual formats. How to do the format, the part that gives you the 3 marks. Yeah, and I probably give a test too because, hey, how else would I know, right? How else would I know that you're doing well, right? So you've got to test yourself, right? This is a great time for me to let you know that if you're doing work on your own, someone needs to be correcting it for you. If you're there just doing papers by yourself, no one is giving you feedback for your writing. That's a 60% strategy, meaning that you have 40% that you're unsure about. It doesn't mean that you could only get a 60% average in your paper. I mean that even really, really good writers can do with advice. All right. There are actually published writers out there who have award winning books who still go and seek advice. So, yes, please seek advice so that you can improve your work. Okay, so first off, you've probably noticed a typo, a huge type. I can't even say typo, it's an error in month six. I did not update my nice little bullet points, right? I apologize for that. However, the heading does kind of express what you need to focus on. So you're going to review grammar or look at any other grammar issues that you think you may have, especially if you've been to someone who can give you feedback. Yes, then you can review grammar or look into new issues. What are some things to review? Like adjectives, use of adjectives, sentence structure, sentence construction, tenses, predicates. Those are things you can review, right? That's what you want to do in the grammar. And then you want to do probably some paper one, paper two practice. Now, here's a lovely thing about next year's exam, right? Maybe you have seen my response to the timetable or not, but I'll just share that here right now. Paper one and paper two is not the same day. Okay. I'm not really a nay or a yay. I'm more like an okay. Um, what I would say, the good thing about this in terms of prep is that you can know that you're prepping for paper two. And then you can do your paper one prep. Yeah, you can do your paper one prep after paper two because paper one is a bit different. Paper one is more grammar. All right. So that's another thing you can do to check up on your grammar. Do a paper one in this month. That's why it's grammar and paper one too. Right. Because when I do paper ones with my students, I either work on the grammar section or I work on the comprehension section, right? I like to do paper ones. I actually like to do papers strategically like that. I don't like to do a full paper until it's closer to exam. Again, depending if you're using this exactly for exam, that's what you'll be doing. But just as how I have this outlined, I like my students to work on just short stories, just summaries, just argumentatives so that they can build themselves up. All right. So this is the process. What do you think? Do you think it makes any sense? All you have to do is comment below what your thoughts are because I appreciate hearing your thoughts. When I first started teaching, I thought I knew what students needed for English. And then I had some really bright, well read students get totally stumped by paper one. And I was like, how do you not know this? And then I realized why. It's because no one was practicing it with them. All right. So I hope that all of this helps you to improve yourself for the exam.